Homage to the Blessed One. I pay homage to that Blessed One, the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one. 1. Explanation of the Discourse on Desire. 772, 766 If a person desires an object of craving, and if that desire is entirely fulfilled, then indeed, they become one with joy and delight, because they obtain what they seek. The phrase desiring an object of craving refers to various forms of desire, which can be broadly classified into two types. 1. The desire for various material things. 2. The desire arising from mental defilements, taints or afflictions. What constitutes the desire for various material things? These include forms that are pleasing to the mind, sounds that are pleasing to the mind, scents that are pleasing to the mind, tastes that are pleasing to the mind, textures and tangible sensations that are pleasing to the mind. Additionally, this category encompasses various objects such as mats and garments, servants and slaves, goats and sheep, chickens and pigs, elephants, cattle, horses and mules, fields and land, gold coins and treasures, villages, towns and royal capitals, entire nations, regions, storehouses and treasuries. Whatever is considered an object of greed falls under the category of desire for material things. Furthermore, there are desires for objects of the past, objects of the future, objects of the present, internal objects, external objects, both internal and external objects, inferior objects, moderate objects, subtle objects, objects of the lower realms, objects of human beings, objects of the celestial beings, objects arising from conditions, desires found in all realms except hell, objects that are created, desires in the realm of deities who manifest creations, objects that are uncreated, objects created by others, desires in the highest celestial realm where deities enjoy creations made by others, objects widely gathered, objects not widely gathered, objects perceived as personal possessions, objects not perceived as personal possessions. All forms of desire, whether within the realm of sensual desire, kamaloka, the realm of form, rupaloka, or the formless realm, apaloka, become the foundation for craving and its objects. When these serve as the basis for thirsting, attachment, indulgence, and intoxication, they are known as objects of desire. These are called the desires for material things. 2. The desire arising from mental defilements. What constitutes the desire arising from mental defilements? The thought of desire is desire. The thought of greed is desire. The thoughts of both desire and greed are desires. Thought itself is desire. The mental state of clinging is desire. The combination of thought and clinging is desire. That is, in relation to the 5 objects of sensual desire, the following are considered desires. The desire for objects of craving. The greed for objects of craving. The delight in objects of craving. The thirst for objects of craving. The attachment to objects of craving. The distress over objects of craving. The indulgence in objects of craving. The clinging to objects of craving. The overwhelming flood of craving for objects. The fetter of craving for objects. The grasping onto objects of craving. The obstruction of desire as a hindrance. Thus, the verse states, O desire, I have seen your root. Desire, you arise from erroneous thoughts. I will no longer think of you. Desire, thus you shall cease to be. These are known as the desires arising from mental defilements. The phrase desiring an object of craving means wishing for, seeking, adhering to, longing for, passionately yearning for, craving for. Thus, desiring an object of craving is explained in this way. If his desire is equally fulfilled means if his refers to him, whether he is a noble, a Brahmin, a commoner, a servant, a layperson, a renunciant, a deity, or a human being. His desire refers to the desire for various things as it is explained. These include forms that are pleasing to the mind, sounds that are pleasing to the mind, fragrances that are pleasing to the mind, tastes that are pleasing to the mind, and tactile sensations that are pleasing to the mind. Equally fulfilled means realized, equally realized, obtained, acquired, reached, or discovered. Thus, if his desire is equally fulfilled, surely he becomes one with a joyful mind. Means surely refers to words that are certain, words free of doubt, words without uncertainty, words without duality, words of necessity, words free from misunderstanding, and words that ensure certainty. This is what surely means. Joy refers to the joy, delight, deep joy, strong joy, laughter, elation, pleasure, satisfaction, enthusiasm, attainment of one's wish, and fulfillment that are associated with the 5 attributes of desire, the 5-fold sensual desires: form, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Mind refers to the heart, the mind, manas, the intention, nasa, the heart, the seat of thought, the realm of recognition, the domain of mind, mano, the place of mental recognition, manadvra, the faculty of mind, manindriya, the function of cognition, vinya, the category of cognition, vinyakanda, and the domain corresponding to the function of cognition, vinyatu. This is what is meant by mind. When this mind is associated with, arises together with, interacts with, is connected with, has a singular arising, a singular cessation, a singular foundation, and a singular object with this joy, one becomes one with a joyful mind, meaning one becomes a person with a joyful mind, a person with a satisfied mind, a person who laughs with joy, a person who rejoices, a person who attains his wish, a person with an enthusiastic mind, a person who delights, and a person who deeply rejoices. Thus, surely, he becomes one with a joyful mind. A person obtains precisely what he seeks. Means obtains refers to obtaining, acquiring, reaching, or discovering. A person, matter, refers to a sentient being, a human, nara, a man, neva, an individual, posa, a person, pudgala, a living being, one who proceeds towards life, a human, jantu, one who will meet death, and one born from manu. Precisely what he seeks refers to exactly what he desires, exactly what he cherishes, exactly what he longs for, exactly what he aspires to, exactly what he craves, whether it be a form, a sound, a smell, a taste, or a touch. Thus, a person obtains precisely what he seeks. Therefore, the Blessed One said, if his desire is equally fulfilled, surely he becomes one with a joyful mind. A person obtains precisely what he seeks. 773, 767 If he desires an object of desire, and a desire arises in him, yet those objects of desire universally decline, he suffers in torment like one pierced by an arrow. 2. If he desires an object of desire means if he refers to him, whether he is a noble, a Brahmin, a commoner, a servant, a layperson, a renunciant, a deity, or a human being. Desires an object of desire means longing for various objects of desire, cherishing them, yearning for them, craving them, and thirsting for them. Furthermore, he is driven, led, carried, and gathered by his craving for objects of desire. Just as one is driven, led, carried, and gathered by an elephant, a horse, an ox, a goat, a sheep, a camel, or a donkey, in the same way, he is driven, led, carried, and gathered by his craving for objects of desire. Thus, if he desires an object of desire, if a desire arises in him means desire refers to the longing for objects of desire in the 5-fold sensual domain, the craving for them, the delight in them, the attachment to them, the anguish over them, the indulgence in them, the clinging to them, the torrent of desire for them, the bondage of desire for them, the grasping of them, and the obstruction of the desire for them. In him, precisely this desire for objects of desire has arisen, been generated, appeared, matured, and manifested. In a person, jantu means in a sentient being, in a human, nara, in a man, neva, in an individual, in a person, in a living being, in one who proceeds towards life, in a human, jantu, in one who will meet death, and in one born from manu. Thus, if a desire arises in him, if those objects of desire universally decline means 1. If those objects of desire universally decline, or 2. If he universally declines from those objects of desire. 1. How do those objects of desire universally decline? If he dwells in the world, those possessions are either taken away by kings, taken away by thieves, burned by fire, carried away by water, taken away by undesirable heirs, fail to be reached where they were stored, or his troubled livelihood, work collapses. The phrase suffering in torment like one pierced by an arrow means, for example, that a person pierced by an iron arrow, or a bone arrow, or an ivory arrow, or a horn arrow, or a wooden arrow, suffers in torments, rages in anger, is wounded, tormented, becomes sick, and falls into despair. Likewise, due to the impermanent and changing nature of desires for various things, sorrow, lamentation, pain, despair, and conflict, grief, sorrow, suffering, worry, and anguish arise in him. He is pierced by the arrow of desire, further pierced by the arrow of sorrow, suffers and torments, rages in anger, is wounded, tormented, becomes sick, and falls into despair. Thus, it is said, suffering and torment like one pierced by an arrow. Therefore, the Blessed One said, if he desires something and longing arises in him, and if those objects of desire universally decline, he will suffer and torment like one pierced by an arrow. Furthermore, just as one avoids the head of a snake with the foot, if he universally avoids all objects of desire, he will overcome attachment in this world, always being mindful. The phrase if he universally avoids all objects of desire means that he, whether a noble, a Brahmin, a commoner, a servant, a householder, a renunciant, a deity, or a human, having reached a certain state or possessing certain qualities, avoids all objects of desire. Broadly speaking, there are two kinds of desires. 1. Desires for material things, and 2. Desires arising from mental defilements. These are explained as the desires for material things and the desires arising from mental defilements. Universally avoiding all objects of desire can be done through two approaches. 1. Through tranquility, or 2. Through severance. 1. How does one universally avoid all objects of desire through tranquility? By seeing that the objects of desire are like a chain of bones, like a piece of meat, like a torch of grass, like a pit of fire, like a dream, like a borrowed thing, like a fruit of a tree, like a slaughterhouse, like a blade or spear, like the head of a snake, or like a lump of fire, one avoids all objects of desire through tranquility. By practicing mindfulness of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, morality, generosity, the gods, mindfulness of breathing, mindfulness of death, mindfulness of the body, and serenity, one also avoids all objects of desire through tranquility. By practicing the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, the sphere of infinite space, the sphere of infinite consciousness, the sphere of nothingness, or the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception, one also avoids all objects of desire through tranquility. This is how one universally avoids all objects of desire through tranquility. 2. How does one universally avoid all objects of desire through severance? By practicing the path of stream entry, one severs all objects of desire leading to evil destinations. By practicing the path of once return, one severs coarse desires. By practicing the path of non-return, one severs subtle desires. By practicing the path of arahantship, one completely and utterly severs all objects of desire without remainder. This is how one universally avoids all objects of desire through severance. Thus, if he universally avoids all objects of desire, just as one avoids the head of a snake with the foot refers to a snake, sapa. Why is it called a snake, sapa? Because it crawls, sansapanto, it is called a snake sapa. Because it moves in curves, buhanto gakadi, it is called a snake bujaga. Because it moves with its chest, uragakadi, it is called a snake uraga. Because it lowers its head and moves, panasuragakadi, it is called a snake panaga. Because it sleeps with its head, sirasupadi, it is called a snake sasapa. Because it lies in a hole, bilasayadi, it is called a snake bulsaya. Because it lies in a cave, gusayadi, it is called a snake gusaya. Because its fangs, da with macron, are weapons, vuda, it is called a snake detiva. Because its poison, visa, is dreadful, gola, it is called a snake golavasa. Because its tongue, jiv, is forked, duvida, it is called a snake duvidajivha. Because it tastes, rasa, with two tongues, it is called a snake duvidarasanu. For example, just as a person who desires to live, not to die, and to seek happiness while avoiding pain should avoid the head of a snake, retreat from it, universally avoid it, and evade it, so too should one who seeks happiness and avoids pain universally avoid, retreat from, and evade all objects of desire. Thus, just as one avoids the head of a snake with the foot, he overcomes this attachment in the world, always being mindful, refers to the person who universally avoids all objects of desire. Attachment is called craving. That is, greed, rga, lust, covetousness, affection, delight, longing for pleasure, mental attachment, yearning, indulgence, clinging, craving, pervasive craving, attachment, sangha, maya, agitation, delusion, generative force, causing samsara, productive force, causing suffering, passionate love, sowing, net, flow, attachment, visadik, thread, attachment, visat, occupational force, creating karma, companion, earnest wish, leading to existence, forest of desires, undergrowth of the Forest of desires, fondness, attachment, expectation, binding, aspiration, wishing, desiring, form desire, sound desire, smell desire, taste desire, touch desire, gain desire, wealth desire, child desire, life desire, thirst, strong thirst, firm thirst, craving, intense craving, restlessness, restless action, inquiry, desire for good, greed, rga for unrighteousness, wrong greed, lobha, lust, longing, envy, equal longing, craving for sensual pleasures, kammathana, craving for existence. Bhavata, craving for non-existence, vibhavata, craving for form realm, craving for formless realm, craving for cessation, nirodha sampatti, craving for form, craving for sound, craving for smell, craving for taste, craving for touch, craving for mental objects, flood, fetter, constraint, grasping, upna, hindrance, obstruction, nara, covering, binding force, accompanying defilement, upakalesa, latent tendency, anusaya, entanglement, sanajana, creeper, materialism, root of suffering, cause of suffering, origin of suffering, Mara's snare, Mara's hook, Mara's realm, river of craving, net of craving, leather strap of craving, sea of craving, greed, avarice, lobha, and the root of unwholesomeness. Attachment, visadik, what is the meaning by which it becomes attachment? By being attached, visada, it is called attachment. By being expansive, visla, it is called attachment. By being diffused, visada, it is called attachment. By venturing forth, visakhadi, it is called attachment. By gathering together, visamaradi, it is called attachment. By one who uses different words, visavdika, it is called attachment. By poisonous root, visamla, it is called attachment. By poisonous fruit, visaphala, it is called attachment. By the widespread benefit of poison, visaparibaga, it is called attachment. Moreover, or rather, that craving is something expansive, visla, extending towards forms, sounds, smells, tastes, tactile sensations, houses, communities, dwellings, gains, fame, praise, pleasures, clothing, alms food, bedding, medicines and requisites for illness, the realm of desire, kammathana, the realm of form, rpadhtu, the formless realm, arpadhtu, existence in the realm of desire. Kamma existence in the realm of form, rpa existence in the formless realm, arpa. Bhava, existence with perception, sanbhava, existence without perception, asanbhava, existence neither with nor without perception, nevasan and sanbhava, existence as a single aggregate, rupakanda only, existence as four aggregates, other than rupakanda, existence as five aggregates, all five khandas, towards the past, future, present, and all phenomena that can be seen, heard, thought, and cognized. It expands visada and extends vitada, and thus it is called attachment. In the world refers to the world of bad destinations, the human world, the heavenly world, the world of the five aggregates, khandas, the world of the 18 elements, dhatus, and the world of the 12 sense bases, ayatanas. Aware one means becoming aware through four aspects. One who practices mindfulness of the body in the body, kammathana satapana, becomes an aware one. One who practices mindfulness of feelings in feelings, vedanapasan satapana, becomes an aware one. One who practices mindfulness of the mind in the mind, sitnapasan satapana, becomes an aware one. One who practices mindfulness of mental objects in mental objects, dhammapasan satapana, becomes an aware one. Through another four aspects, one also becomes an aware one. By universally avoiding heedlessness, one becomes an aware one. By practicing what should be practiced, one becomes an aware one. By breaking through what binds mindfulness, one becomes an aware one. By not forgetting what pertains to mindfulness, one becomes an aware one. Through another four aspects, one also becomes an aware one. By possessing mindfulness, one becomes an aware one. By dwelling with mindfulness, one becomes an aware one. By becoming skilled through mindfulness, one becomes an aware one. By not deteriorating through mindfulness, one becomes an aware one. Through another four aspects, one also becomes an aware one. By being as one is, one becomes an aware one. By calming the mind, one becomes an aware one. By stilling the mind, one becomes an aware one. By possessing the quality of tranquility, one becomes an aware one. By recollecting the Buddha, one becomes an aware one. By recollecting the Dhamma, one becomes an aware one. By recollecting the Sangha, one becomes an aware one. By recollecting morality, one becomes an aware one. By recollecting generosity, one becomes an aware one. By recollecting the gods, one becomes an aware one. By practicing mindfulness of breathing, npanati, one becomes an aware one. By practicing mindfulness of death, maranasati, one becomes an aware one. By practicing mindfulness of the body's nature, kyagatsadi, one becomes an aware one. By practicing recollection of peace, upasammasadi, one becomes an aware one. Thus, mindfulness, sati, recollection, present moment awareness, mindfulness as remembrance, mindfulness as retention, mindfulness as enumeration, mindfulness as non-forgetting, mindfulness as the faculty of mindfulness, satindriya, mindfulness as the power of mindfulness, satabala, right mindfulness, samsati, mindfulness as a factor of enlightenment, satasambhojaga, the one-way path. This is what is called mindfulness. One who possesses, fully possesses, owns, is complete in, has, fully has, or is equipped with this mindfulness is said to be an aware one. He overcomes this attachment in the world. Always being mindful means that, whether there is attachment in the world, or whether there is attachment in the world, the mindful one transcends, rises above, ascends, equally surpasses and overcomes it. Thus, he overcomes this attachment in the world, always being mindful. Therefore, the Blessed One said, just as one avoids the head of a snake with the foot, if he universally avoids all objects of desire, he will overcome attachment in this world, always being mindful. 769 fields, lands, or gold, cattle and horses, slaves and servants, women, dependents, and various objects of desire. If a person greedily seeks them, fields, lands, or gold means a fields are paddy fields, rice fields, mung bean fields, barley fields, wheat fields, sesame fields. Lands are house plots, warehouse plots, front yards, backyards, orchards, monastery grounds. Gold is money, coins. Thus, fields, lands, or gold. Cattle and horses, slaves and servants means cattle are cows. Horses are domestic animals and so on. Slaves are of four kinds: those born into slavery, those bought with money, those who voluntarily become slaves, and those who involuntarily become slaves due to fear. As the verse says, happy smiley indeed, some are born as pure slaves, some are bought as slaves, others voluntarily become slaves, and still others become slaves driven by fear. Servants refers to three kinds of servants: hired workers, laborious, and those who live dependent on others. Thus, cattle and horses, slaves and servants. Women, dependents, and various objects of desire means women refers to all women in general. Dependents refers to four kinds of dependents: relatives as dependents, clan members as dependents, those bound by spells as dependents, and those skilled in crafts as dependents. Various objects of desire refers to many objects of desire. These various objects of desire include forms pleasing to the mind, omitted, and tactile sensations pleasing to the mind. Thus, women, dependents, and various objects of desire. If a person greedily seeks them means that person, whether noble, Brahmin, commoner, servant, householder, renunciant, deity, or human, who has attained a certain state or possesses certain qualities. A person, Nara, refers to sentient beings, humans, Manuya, mankind, Navaka, individuals, Purusa, persons, Pudgala, living beings, mortals, Jantu, or descendants of Manu. Greedily seeks means being driven by defiled desires for material things, craving, seeking, universally craving, and becoming universally bound. Thus, if that person greedily seeks them. Therefore, the Blessed One said, fields, lands, or gold, cattle and horses, slaves and servants, women, dependents, and various objects of desire, if a person greedily seeks them. 770 powerless forces crush him, dangers trample him. Thereafter, suffering follows him, like water seeping into a broken boat. Powerless forces crush him means powerless forces are weak, feeble, lacking strength, inferior, vile, lowly, wicked, small, and insignificant defilements, khalsas. These defilements defeat, completely defeat, conquer, overwhelm, utterly seize, and trample that person. Thus, it is said, powerless forces crush him. Furthermore, if a person lacks the power of faith, effort, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, shame, and conscience, these defilements defeat, completely defeat, conquer, overwhelm, utterly seize, and trample that person. Thus, it is also said, powerless forces crush him. Dangers trample him refers to two kinds of dangers. 1. Manifest dangers, and 2. Concealed dangers. 1. What are manifest dangers? Lions, tigers, leopards, bears, hyenas, wolves, buffaloes, elephants, snakes, scorpions, centipedes, thieves, or violent youths, whether they have already acted or not, eye diseases, ear diseases, nose diseases, tongue diseases, bodily diseases, headaches, ear infections, mouth diseases, toothaches, coughs, asthma, colds, fevers, aging, stomach ailments, fainting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, epidemics, leprosy, tumors, smallpox, tuberculosis, epilepsy, skin conditions, itching, scabies, wounds, scabs, bleeding, diabetes, hemorrhoids, boils, ulcers, and various sufferings caused by bile, phlegm, wind, seasonal changes, improper posture, sudden occurrences, or karmic retribution. These are called manifest dangers. 2. What are concealed dangers? Evil actions of body, speech, and mind, hindrances such as desire, kammathana, ill will, vipta, sloth and torpor, thnamita, restlessness and remorse, adakakakukaka, doubt, visikich, greed, lobha, anger, dosa, delusion, moha, resentment, upanya, hypocrisy, ma with macron, ya with macron, cruelty, vehemence, envy, issa, stinginess, macaria, deceit, ma with macron, ya with macron, flattery, sthaya, arrogance, atimna, rage, koda, conceit, mna, overestimation, atimna, pride, mada, negligence, all defilements, kailsas, all evil deeds, all afflictions, all sufferings, all distress, all unwholesome actions. These are called concealed dangers. What are dangers, parasaya? It is called dangers for 3 reasons. 1. Universally defeating, parasahadi, thus dangers. 2. Arising due to universal decline, parihya, thus dangers. 3. Being something that clings, say, thus dangers. 1. How does universally defeating explain dangers? These dangers defeat, completely defeat, conquer, overwhelm, utterly seize and trample that person. Thus, universally defeating explains dangers. 2. How does arising due to universal decline explain dangers? These dangers arise due to the obstruction and universal decline of wholesome qualities. What wholesome qualities? The Noble Eightfold Path, mindfulness, right effort, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 right exertions, the 4 bases of spiritual power, the 5 faculties, the 5 powers, the 7 factors of enlightenment, and the Eightfold Path, all these wholesome qualities are obstructed and decline universally. Thus, arising due to universal decline explains dangers. 3. How does being something that clings explain dangers? In dependence on these unwholesome qualities, they arise and cling to one's self-identity. For example, just as creatures dwell in holes, water, forests, or trees, so too do these unwholesome qualities arise and cling to one's self-identity. Thus, being something that clings explains dangers. This is what was taught by the Blessed One. Monks, a monk who is internal disciples and a teacher dwells in pain, without peace, in this world. How does a monk who is internal disciples and a teacher dwell in pain, without peace, in this world? Monks, here, when a monk sees forms with the eye, unwholesome thoughts and considerations arise within him that should bind him. These dwell within him. Because unwholesome qualities flow into him, and seva, he is said to have internal disciples and tevsika. These become habitual for him. Because unwholesome qualities become habitual for him, samutkarati, he is said to have a teacher karya. Monks, further, when a monk hears sounds with the ear, smells odors with the nose, tastes flavors with the tongue, touches tactile objects with the body, cognizes mental objects with the mind, unwholesome thoughts and considerations arise within him that should bind him. These dwell within him. Because unwholesome qualities flow into him, he is said to have internal disciples. These become habitual for him. Because unwholesome qualities become habitual for him, he is said to have a teacher. Thus, monks, in this way, a monk who is internal disciples and a teacher dwells in pain, without peace, in this world. This is also explained as dangers because they cling to him. This was taught by the Blessed One. Monks, there are 3 things that become inner defilements, inner non-friends, inner enemies, inner killers, and inner adversaries. What are these 3 things? Monks, greed becomes an inner defilement, an inner non-friend, an inner enemy, an inner killer, and an inner adversary. Anger. Omitted. Delusion becomes an inner defilement, an inner non-friend, an inner enemy, an inner killer, and an inner adversary. Monks, these 3 things become inner defilements, inner non-friends, inner enemies, inner killers, and inner adversaries. As the verse says, happy smiley, greed generates what is unrighteous. Greed disturbs the mind. The terror arising from within remains unrecognized by people. A greedy person does not know righteousness, a greedy person does not see the Dhamma. When a person is defeated by greed, they fall into the darkness of ignorance. Anger generates what is unrighteous. Anger disturbs the mind. The terror arising from within remains unrecognized by people. An angry person does not know righteousness, an angry person does not see the Dhamma. When a person is defeated by anger, they fall into the darkness of ignorance. Delusion generates what is unrighteous. Delusion disturbs the mind. The terror arising from within remains unrecognized by people. A deluded person does not know righteousness, a deluded person does not see the Dhamma. When a person is defeated by delusion, they fall into the darkness of ignorance. This is also explained as dangers because they cling to him. This too was taught by the Blessed One. Great King, there are three things. These qualities arise within a person for their harm, for their suffering, and for their unrestful dwelling. What are these three things? Great King, the quality of greed arises within a person for their harm, for their suffering, and for their unrestful dwelling. Great King, the quality of anger. Omitted. Great King, the quality of delusion arises within a person for their harm, for their suffering, and for their unrestful dwelling. Great King, these three qualities arise within a person for their harm, for their suffering, and for their unrestful dwelling. As the verse says, happy smiley, greed, anger, and delusion harm a person of evil mind, like bamboo bearing fruit destroys itself, these three things arising from within destroy them. This too was taught by the Blessed One. As the verse says, happy smiley and greed, further, anger arise from themselves as causes. Dissatisfaction, pleasure, and shuddering arise from themselves. Various thoughts arise from themselves and discard good intentions, like boys playing, casting away crows with tied feet. This is also explained as dangers because they cling to him. When dangers trample him, those dangers defeat, completely defeat, conquer, overwhelm, utterly seize and trample that person. Thus, when dangers trample him, thereafter, suffering follows him means thereafter, after those dangers, suffering follows that person, accompanies them, and becomes something that clings. The suffering of birth follows, accompanies, and clings. The suffering of aging follows, accompanies, and clings. The suffering of sickness follows, accompanies, and clings. The suffering of death follows, accompanies, and clings. The suffering of sorrow, lamentation, pain, despair, and conflict follows, accompanies, and clings. The suffering of hell follows, accompanies, and clings. The suffering of the animal womb follows, accompanies, and clings. The suffering of the ghost realm follows, accompanies, and clings. The suffering of being human, the suffering rooted in entering the womb, the suffering rooted in staying in the womb, the suffering rooted in emerging from the womb, the suffering connected to being born, the suffering of being under others' control, the suffering of self-harm, the suffering of harm by others follows, accompanies, and clings. The suffering of pain follows, accompanies, and clings. The suffering of formations, the suffering of change, eye disease, ear disease, nose disease, tongue disease, bodily disease, head disease, outer ear disease, mouth disease, tooth disease, cough, asthma, colds, fever, aging, stomach ailments, fainting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, epidemics, leprosy, tumors, smallpox, tuberculosis, epilepsy, skin conditions, itching, scabies, wounds, scabs, bleeding, diabetes, hemorrhoids, boils, ulcers, various sufferings caused by bile, phlegm, wind, seasonal changes, improper posture, sudden occurrences, or karmic retribution, cold, heat, hunger, thirst, excrement, urine, the suffering of contact with flies, mosquitoes, wind, heat, or snakes, the suffering of a mother's death, a father's death, a brother's death, a sister's death, a son's death, a daughter's death, the suffering of relatives' calamities, the suffering of property loss, the suffering of illness, the suffering of moral downfall, the suffering of wrong views follows, accompanies, and clings. Thus, thereafter, suffering follows him. Just as water seeps into a broken boat means, for example, when a broken boat is on the water, water enters from here and there, follows it, accompanies it, and clings to it. From the front, water follows, accompanies, and clings to it, from behind or from below, from the sides, water follows, accompanies, and clings to it. In the same way, after those dangers, suffering follows that person, accompanies them, and clings to them. The suffering of birth follows, accompanies, and clings. Omitted, see 70. The suffering of calamities in views follows, accompanies, and clings. Thus, just as water seeps into a broken boat. Therefore, the Blessed One said, powerless forces crush him. Dangers trample him. Thereafter, suffering follows him, just as water seeps into a broken boat. 777, 771. Therefore, one should always be mindful and universally avoid all objects of desire. Having abandoned them, one should cross over the flood of craving. Only by bailing out the water from the boat can one reach the other shore. Therefore, one should always be mindful means therefore refers to this being the result, cause, condition, or causal relationship. Seeing the danger, faults equally in all objects of desire. Thus, therefore, person, Jantu, refers to sentient beings, humans, Nara, mankind, Manavaka, individuals, Purusa, persons, Pudgala, living beings, mortals, Jantu, or descendants of Manu. Always means always, at all times, continuously, without interruption, like waves arising in water, without gaps, successively, accompanying, touching, before meals, after meals, in the first watch, evening, middle watch, midnight, last watch, dawn, during the dark fortnight, bright fortnight, rainy season, winter, summer, youth, middle age, and old age. Being mindful means becoming mindful through four aspects, practicing mindfulness of the body in the body, feelings in feelings, mind in mind, and mental objects in mental objects. Through another four aspects, one also becomes mindful. Omitted, see 31-33, one is called mindful. Thus, therefore, one should always be mindful. One should universally avoid all objects of desire means desires broadly fall into two categories. 1. Desires for material things, and 2. Desires arising from mental defilements. 1. Omitted, see 3-4. These are called desires for material things. 2. Omitted, see 5-6. These are called desires arising from mental defilements. One should universally avoid all objects of desire means one should universally avoid them through two approaches. 1. Through tranquility, or 2. Through severance. 1. How does one universally avoid them through tranquility? By seeing that the objects of desire are like a chain of bones, one should universally avoid them through tranquility. By seeing that they are like a piece of meat, one should universally avoid them through tranquility. By seeing that they are like a torch of grass, one should universally avoid them through tranquility. Omitted, see 23-25. By practicing the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception, one should universally avoid them through tranquility. This is how one universally avoids them through tranquility. 2. Omitted, see 26. This is how one universally avoids them through severance. Thus, one should universally avoid all objects of desire. Having abandoned them, one should cross over the flood of craving means them refers to fully understanding desires for material things and abandoning desires arising from mental defilements, abandoning, removing, ceasing, and attaining the state of cessation. Abandoning the hindrance of desire for objects, the hindrance of ill will. Omitted the hindrance of sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse and doubt, abandoning, removing, ceasing, and attaining the state of cessation, one should cross over, rise above, ascend, equally surpass and overcome the floods of craving, existence, views, and ignorance. Thus, having abandoned them, one should cross over the flood of craving. Only by bailing out the water from the boat can one reach the other shore means, for example, just as heavy water in a boat should be bailed out, discarded, and thrown away so the boat becomes light and swiftly, easily, with little difficulty, reaches the other shore, in the same way, fully understanding desires for material things and abandoning desires arising from mental defilements, abandoning, removing, ceasing, and attaining the state of cessation, the hindrance of desire for objects, the hindrance of ill will. Omitted the hindrance of sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse and doubt, abandoning, removing, ceasing, and attaining the state of cessation, one should swiftly, easily, with little difficulty, reach the other shore. The other shore is explained as the deathless nibbana. That is, the cessation of all formations, the abandonment of all supports, the extinction of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. One should reach the other shore means one should arrive at, attain, and realize the other shore. One who reaches the other shore means if one desires to reach the other shore, then one is a person who reaches the other shore. If one reaches the other shore, then one is a person who reaches the other shore. If one has reached the other shore, then one is a person who reaches the other shore. This too was taught by the Blessed One. Having crossed over the ocean and reached the other shore, standing on dry land as a true Brahmin and monks, Brahmin here is a synonym for an arahant. He is one who reaches the other shore through realization, full understanding, abandonment, practice, verification, and attainment of meditative absorption. He is one who reaches the other shore through the realization of all phenomena, the full understanding of all suffering, the abandonment of all defilements, the practice of the Four Noble Paths, stream entry, once return, non-return, and arahantship, the verification of cessation, nibbana, and the attainment of all meditative absorptions. He is one who has attained mastery and perfection in noble morality, noble concentration, noble wisdom, and noble liberation. He is one who has reached the other shore, attained the ultimate, reached the end, attained the limit, completed the journey, found refuge, become fearless, attained immortality, and realized nibbana. For him, suffering has been fully understood, its origin abandoned, the path practiced, cessation realized, what should be known has been known, what should be understood has been understood, what should be abandoned has been abandoned, what should be practiced has been practiced, and what should be realized has been realized. He is one who has removed the bolt of ignorance, filled the moat of sasra, pulled out the pillar of craving, and become free of the bolt of the 5 lower fetters. He is a holy one who has lowered the banner of pride, laid down the burden of existence, and freed himself from bonds. He has abandoned the 5 hindrances, possesses the 6 supports, renunciation in forms, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and mental objects, has 1 guardian, mindfulness, and 4 bases, wisdom and enjoyment, acceptance, avoidance, and removal. He has removed his own truths, prejudices, completely and rightly abandoned searching, has pure thoughts, calmed bodily formations, liberated mind, liberated wisdom, unified, completed the holy life, the foremost person, the highest person, and attained the highest goal. He neither accumulates nor extracts karmic results, having already extracted, and dwells in the world. He neither abandons nor clings to defilements, having already abandoned and dwells in the world. He neither departs nor approaches the worldly, having already departed and dwells in the world. He neither extinguishes nor smokes worldly passions, having already extinguished and dwells in the world. He dwells in the world possessing the category of morality, slakkhanda, concentration, samdhikkhandha, wisdom, puntkhandha, liberation, vimudikhandha, and knowledge of liberation, vimudinakhandha, that require no further learning. He dwells practicing truth equally, transcending agitation equally, completely extinguishing the fire of defilements, not universally going to sasra, receiving good fortune, enjoying freedom, possessing perfect purity of loving kindness, met, compassion, karu, sympathetic joy, mudit, equanimity, upak, ultimate and complete purity, purity of detachment, from craving, liberation, contentment, the limit of aggregates, khandhas, elements, dhtus, sense bases, yatanas, conditions, gadis, rebirth, existence, sasra, becoming, final existence, and final physical body as an arahant. As the verse says, happy smiley, for him, this is the last existence. This is the last physical body. Birth and death in sasra have ceased. There is no further existence for him. Thus, only by bailing out the water from the boat can one reach the other shore. Thus, the Blessed One said, therefore, one should always be mindful and universally avoid all objects of desire. Having abandoned them, one should cross over the flood of craving. Only by bailing out the water from the boat can one reach the other shore. The explanation of the Discourse on Desire is the first.